Well, hello, everyone. I'm Mark Peikert. I'm the editor-in-chief of Playbill magazine, and I'm delighted to be here with the two overlapping portions of my Venn diagram, film and theater, and these three amazing people. Michael Mayer, who directed The Seagull, and Leslie Urdang, and Tom Hulce, who produced. And you know that Michael's the director because he brought out a water bottle that dwarfs all of ours. Hi, guys. Thank you for joining us.
Great to be here.
And thank you for joining us as well. So I want to ask, because Chekhov is universal. I mean, Chekhov is Shakespeare to a certain extent. To make a motion picture of The Seagull, why The Seagull of all of the Chekhov plays that you could have filmed?
This goes really to Tom, who had the genesis of the idea. First of all, because I love the play.
Mike.
Mike. Oh, sorry. I love the play. Is it on? No. Can you hear me? We can hear you. What do we do? Is it good? Is it okay? We can't see you at all because these lights are so bright, so don't hesitate to let us know. Everyone kept telling me that Constantine was a part that I had to play, and I kept reading the play, and I felt like I didn't really understand what it was or enough about it, and finally I thought, oh, well, maybe I should give it a try, and so I did the thing that I felt was the right thing to do if you were doing a really hard thing that you didn't know if you understood or not. I went to Winnipeg. And Kathleen Turner and I played Constantine and Nina. And
when was this?
Oh, nice. Well, it was after 1974, and it was before the early 80s because I did it again, maybe right before Amadeus came out. And so anyway, we were both there for the same reason, and we didn't really know how to do it, but it was what it was. And then a certain amount of time went by. I don't mean to make this about my acting career, but I had an idea about the part. And so I went through that calendar that TCG puts out that has the season of every regional theater and circled everyone that was doing The Seagull, and then figured out that South Coast Rep in California was probably the most interesting place to go. So I got in touch with them and asked if they'd maybe consider asking me to come, and they did. And it was such an amazing experience, and hard, really hard. And the fact that it's an ensemble play meant that it was very hard to sort of stay in while you were off stage, which was a considerable amount of time. And so I would just sit in, just off stage on some piece of scenery that was for some other, one of the other acts. And I would just listen to the play every night to try and stay in the story. And I had a whole program, and I listened to music and like that. But as the weeks went on, I started to fantasize about what all the other characters were doing when they weren't on stage. And then the idea of being able to follow any one of them at any moment started to feel very compelling, and also a more filmic idea than the theater, because the way Chekhov did it was great for the theater. And that was the very beginning. And coincidentally, the actress playing Nina in that production had also done a production of the play before. In hers, directed by one of those Eastern European auteur visionary kind of directors, she got to wear a bird suit as Nina. And I don't know if it was at the beginning or the end, or she did it in the play, but that didn't seem so interesting. But she also said that they started the play with the lotto game, and talked about that the way people talk in that fourth act, they're all saying things about everyone else, but you don't know why they're being the way they are, and then they found a way to flash back, and I thought that was a uniquely cinematic idea. And so just in the way conversations go, Michael and I were walking somewhere, and I don't know if you talked about Othello or if I talked about this first.
I had a similar idea about Othello at one point, about moving the acts around a little bit. I don't know how, but then you mentioned the Seagull, and it is one of my absolute favorite plays also. I got really turned on by his idea, and we went from there. We went to Annette Bening, actually. That was our first stop. And she said yes.
You started with Annette Bening?
Yeah, not bad, right?
And Michael, you helped adapt the screenplay with Stephen Karam, right?
Well, in a sense, in the same way that any director helps. I mean, he really wrote it. He found someone to do a literal translation. And after meeting with me and Tom and us talking him through the concept of beginning in the fourth act and flashing back, and knowing that we wanted to do a very lively and contemporary cinematic treatment of the period story. Like, we didn't want to do like Chekhov in the Hamptons or in Hollywood. You know, those things have been done before, and what we felt hadn't been really done, at least recently and in a kind of holistic way, was an English language Seagull on film. And Annette seemed so great for it, and Stephen loves her. So we worked together on it, but he wrote it. And it was only after the first draft that I started helping in terms of the shaping and stuff. And after we found the location, which was amazing, that he could start actually incorporating the reality of that house and its relationship to the lake and to the woods and stuff. Jane Muskie, our production designer, found it. She went there when she was a little girl, and she swam in the lake. She said, "I remember when I was a young Russian girl swimming in this lake." And she's American, so I was like, "Oh, really?" But she's from Russian descent, and it's a Russian Americans made that house on the lake, and it was really.
Where is it at?
It's in Monroe, New York. It's called Arrow Lake, and it's there, and you can have like Russian weddings there.
Only Russian weddings. And Leslie, how did you get involved with all of this?
Well, I know these guys from the theater, and
From New York Stage and Film that you founded.
yes, I have a theater company that is devoted to the development of new plays, and both Tom and Michael have worked up there, most notably on American Idiot, developing that, and Michael's on our board of directors. We share it. We're both on the board together, and Tom and I work together. So they came to me and just wanted advice on. I've been working in film for a long time and made a lot of independent films that have been challenging to get made. A couple of plays that have been turned into movies. And I explained what I knew about it. And very happily and luckily, Tom called me a little while after that and said, "Would you actually partner with us on this?" And I said it would be my honor. I just, anytime you have a piece of material that is so attractive to actors, it just makes it all possible, because people can do things out of their passion for it as opposed to thinking, "Oh, this is my big payday." So everyone's there for the right reasons. It's a labor of love for everybody, and that is really the best environment to do something as challenging as this is. So.
Yes, I read that you filmed it in 21 days.
It was crazy. It's really fast.
That's 3 weeks.
It's nuts. Honestly, it is because of what Leslie says, that everyone had a real passion for it. I will say that aside from Saoirse, who was at that point the only member of the cast who had never done a play in her life. She did The Crucible last year, or was it the year before? It was right after we shot. She did her first play, The Crucible, on Broadway. But everyone else was a theater animal. And so they understood sort of innately at this point how to participate in a kind of ensemble that way and work together. But if we hadn't had that location, it would have been impossible. And we got everyone scheduled together, and we all basically lived up there. All the dressing rooms, hair and makeup were all bedrooms in that house. Oh, wow. And we ate all our meals together on the property, and we couldn't shoot completely in sequence, but we could, because of the nature of the way we were shooting and the nature of the environment, we could actually function and go from some scenes into another. And you could see the camera moves through, and exactly as it feels to you watching it is how the house is. So we were very, very lucky. It was like another character. It was like the 11th principal in the show.
Well, and you got Ann Roth, the genius Ann Roth, to do the costumes.
Well, that was a miracle too. I mean, she's unbelievable.
She said no at first. She said it's absolutely impossible to do the wigs and the period clothes, and it's so important to dress Annette, and I can't do it, Leslie. I cannot do it. And then I said, all right, you just need to do two things. First of all, we're all in one location, so we can give you some Teamster money, and you have to just sit down with Tom and Michael, at which point she called me back. She goes, all right, I'm in love. I'm doing it. So
she was amazing. She was kind of like the other director on the movie. I mean, she decided it was going to be 1904 because the silhouette was better than 1898 or 1905, you know. So she decided that she knew she would sit. We were there meeting with her, and she said, well, this is the pair of the boots that the boy will wear when he puts his feet up on the desk drawer, and when you shoot past the shoes, you'll see the gun in the drawer. It's like, okay. And she'll tell Annette, this sweater is at the bottom of your closet and you never ever wear it. And so it's that kind of thing. And she put cookie crumbs in Brian Dennehy's jacket pocket, because it's exactly what would be there, that kind of thing.
She campaigned really strongly that there should be a scene with naked children out in the field while some beautiful piece of farm machinery were baking the hay into bales and stuff.
Oh, she described the bales should be the round kind, not the stacked up kind. It was
and one thing this audience will appreciate, because at a certain point we were almost finished with the shoot, and she's 85.
She's 85, yeah.
And
3 Tony nominations this year.
Season.
But we were out in the field in the scene where Saoirse is riding on the horse, and it was 9,000 degrees, and she was sitting on an ice cooler with under a tent, and she said, Leslie, come over here. She said, sit down. I said, okay. She goes, I just have to say we're really, really lucky. I said, well, I feel lucky, but what are you talking about? She goes, look out there. She said, every one of these people is a real actor. And that makes all the difference. So the generosity of all of people like you. So
it was beautiful.
Well, I mean, yes. I mean, you went to Annette first, but everybody else, how did you end up with this cast? Because this is a cast to make film lovers and theater lovers salivate when you hear they're going to do the Seagull.
Well, I think that it was 2 things. It was Chekhov and it was Annette Bening. Honestly, I mean, you have her, and it immediately attracts other people. The fact that she said yes, and I really, she made a joke of it, but I think there's a grain of truth in it, that she said yes because she thought there was no fucking way that we'd ever raise the money to do this movie. It was an easy yes, but then once we had her, we start attracting Corey Stoll and Saoirse and Lizzie Moss and Brian Dennehy, you know, it's kind of, then you were really off to the races, you know.
And one of the things that we were intrigued by is the possibility of having the ages of the main characters be as close to what Chekhov identified in the play, which is that she's whatever age she is, and then Trigorin is maybe 10 years younger than she is, and that Nina maybe is 19 and her son is in his late 20s. So the idea that her lover and her son might be a little closer in age, and that might make things a little more particular, and the gap between those four people, and then Masha somewhere around Constantine's age, seemed really exciting to get to do, as opposed to the way it's usually done, where the two young ones are the same age and the two older ones are the same age.
That's right.
Well, did you have any time at all for rehearsal with this?
You know, very, very little, but we did carve out what we could. We did a reading about a year before we shot, and it was the first draft, and we were at the Public Theater, right? And it was Annette and Corey and Saoirse. Those were the three that actually ended up shooting the movie. We had other people there, but it was our first time hearing it and talking about it, and it gave us a great opportunity to hear it. And Annette and Saoirse and Corey certainly could then really percolate on this. Then we did, once we were fully cast, before we started shooting, we did another big table read, but it felt very theatery. It didn't feel like a movie table read. So we got a room at NYU, we read it, and we talked about it at great length. And then Annette had us all over for dinner one night at her apartment, and we just sat around and we read it again and talked about it some more. And at that time, I was doing Hedwig and the Angry Inch on Broadway, and down in the basement of the Belasco is this giant room where Houdini used to put his elephant. You know, when it was the disappearing elephant.
Spoiler alert.
Right? So, oh, well.
That's how he did it.
What can I say? But so Annette flew into town, and the two of us basically were there and invited any of the other actors who were around to come and work on scenes in the basement while Neil Patrick Harris was, you know, screaming his face off upstairs.
During performances, while we were all at Hedwig, Annette Bening was downstairs in the elephant room.
That's right, yeah.
Running lines from the Seagull.
That's exactly right, yeah. Yeah. And then on set, you know, again, we were all there all the time, so there was, it was a hot set, right? So everything was ready to go all the time. So we could actually rehearse scenes while they were lighting another scene. So we had a little bit more than we might have, given how short the shoot was.
Well, what I'm so surprised by, I mean, hearing you talk about this with 21 days and with just one location, is how truly cinematic this adaptation is. I mean, this is not a movie where you feel like it's a staged play, a filmed play. Good. This is something that it's very outdoors. It's very, you have a whole scene in a rowboat.
Well, that's like, you know, Stephen came up with the being on the rowboat, being in the woods and stuff. In the rowboat, oh my God, it was like, that's a perfect example of what you can't really do on stage, that kind of scene. And that kind of intimacy for the camera really to be between these two people. So that is a great example.
Well, how much of that was in the script, and how much of that was just getting to the location and saying, okay, let's make some very quick adjustments
I would say
now?
We didn't make adjustments. We did make adjustments there, but most of it was after I had been up there and spent time really scouting the place. Then I went to Stephen and explained to him how it could all work.
Yeah.
Before that, when he first showed us maybe his first 30 pages, or he had such reverence for Chekhov that he was very reticent to be as free with it. And so we talked a lot after that 30 pages. And when he came back with his next draft, it was thrilling because he totally got turned on to the fact that you could put that scene, just even part of it, out on a lake, and that Annette and Arkadna could be upstairs in the bathtub, and Konstantin could be down in his music room, and they could both see that going on over there, and Masha could be wandering around someplace at the same time, and all of the opportunities that made it more cinematic. Yeah.
And accessible. I think one of the things that people talk about is a lot of people have come up and said, this is the first time I've completely understood the play, and because there's so much subtext, and I know what the actors have been saying. My husband plays Dr. Dorn, so I got to hear a lot about what all the actors were talking about, but was that the subtext, the camera can get so close that it can read your inner life more and your emotional life more, which is harder to do on stage for,
Yeah, I mean, I feel like in thinking about working on this and talking about it so much lately, I realized that, in a sense, like the way that Chekhov wrote kind of anticipated film acting and film technique, because he had time. You would spend a lot of time in these scenes, and I don't know if he invented subtext, but he certainly put it in the forefront of acting. He and Stanislavski together sort of created this concept and this is why I think the play was a failure when it was first done in St. Petersburg. It wasn't until it was at Moscow Arts Theater with Stanislavski that they understood that there could be another truth other than what people were saying to each other. And people don't always listen to each other. And in the old well-made plays, they did. Someone would speechify, and this other person was obliged to receive exactly what was said and then respond. So the fact that all this was under the surface, and that there was like kind of like deep field dramaturgy, you know? So there was stuff in the foreground and then stuff in the background, and then the person who was in the background would then be in the foreground, and it was that ensemble feeling is also, that's what so the camera really can do that.
And it's funny.
Yes, well, he called it a comedy.
I mean, but this is the first time that I've ever seen a Masha actually get a laugh out of "I'm in mourning for my life."
Yeah, she's extraordinary.
Was that something that you guys talked about a lot in rehearsals and pre-production and during the filming? That
we definitely wanted it to be funny, for sure. And Lizzie, I didn't know that she was that funny, actually, until Leslie told me I should check out her last few episodes of Mad Men, which I thought she was terrific in it, but she always seemed sort of serious. And then she had this great mordant sense of humor, and it kind of was able to be inside the character and outside it at the same time. It seemed very Masha-like to me.
And then we're almost out of time, but I just want to ask Tom, as an actor yourself, and as a producer on this, how did being an actor influence you as a producer? Or did it? I'll give you an easy out.
I don't know, to be honest with you. I know that just in general, in the producing work, the fact that I'm so used to process, and for me, I always loved the rehearsal process more than the performance process, which maybe accounts for part of why I'm happy to be doing what I'm doing now. But I love the process. I love the choices that you get to make to try and mine what is truest about a story. And so,
can I jump in 1 second? Just from being someone who's worked with you a lot, and I've worked with a lot of other producers as well, but I think what he's onto is like that you're such an option junkie. You know what I mean? So as an actor, you want to try it this way, you want to try it that way. What about this? How about that? And it's wonderful, to have you as a producer, he's always offering the opportunity to everyone to try it a different way. Whereas some people might say, you know, they're looking at the clock and they're like, we gotta go. I think it should be this. Tom is always like, well, maybe it could be that. Or why not that, you know? And that's really incredibly liberating.
Yeah.
And to add one more thing, because I've had a lot of producing partners, but I've never had a producing partner who is an artist, and that makes a huge difference in terms of the whole environment. So,
Right back to you.
Yay.
Well, I can't top that. So, guys, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for sticking around.
Thank you.
It's out in theaters in New York and LA on Friday.
On Friday, yeah.
So, guys, go see it again. Bring some friends.
People like it even better the second time.
And even more the fifth.
Right. Thank you.
Good night.